Hello, Radiant One, and welcome to Spiritual Business with Maria Saraphina, the show and podcast for soul-driven, heart-based spiritual entrepreneurs, business owners, and Magdalene's rising, ready to expand and wanting to lead with love in business and life. I am your host, spiritual business coach, mentor, catalyst, and facilitator, Maria Saraphina, and it is my deep honor, my great pleasure, and joy to share this episode with you. If you feel the deep stirrings of something new asking to be born through you, go to mariasarafina.com/DCIA to download the free guide, Divine Clarity and Inspired Action, that I've created for you. Divine Clarity and Inspired Action will help you to connect with your divine feminine essence of gnosis, wisdom, knowledge, and intuition, as well as activate your divine masculine essence of action, creation, expansion, and building, so that you may experience the satisfaction and liberation that comes from bringing to life that which you're here to birth while being, doing, and living your soul's divine purpose. On my website, you will also find show notes, transcripts, and previous episodes. Helen, welcome to the Spiritual Business Podcast, show and podcast. I am thrilled and honored that you have taken time out of your busy schedule to be with us today to share about your journey. As the listeners may know, these conversations are really about empowering the listener or the viewer to see what's possible by having you share your story of where you came to be where you're at today with the successful business that I know that you run and that I've been a part of in terms of having had my own fingerprint analyzed. But would you start us out by telling us who you are, what you do, and who you serve?
Well, my name is Helen Elizabeth Evans, and that's if you wanted to find out more about me online, which you would need to search under.
Yeah.
I really am, I suppose in many ways, I would say that I'm very much a catalyst for people that I would call leaders in the making. These are people who are often tired of the cookie cutter approach in terms of business, and they want a profitable, fulfilling business that's perfectly aligned with who they are. So they want some kind of level of meaning, but at the same time to be making some money. And they also want to have more like a full expression of who they are. Those are the kind of people that I work with. Some of the things that I do for them is I really help them get very clear on what their soul purpose is, what their soul intended for this lifetime, and help them get a more clear, practical sense of what the ideal path is for them. So, and I use scientific hand and fingerprint analysis to do that. Well, that's one of the things that I use. It's the sexy part of what I do. And really, ultimately, what I'm doing is I'm helping them get a very clear focus and direction that is very unique to them. So, chucking out all the shoulds, chucking out the other people's ideas, but actually really coming out with what's really right for that particular client. And what I've noticed is that it really gives my clients a lot of strength, courage, and a feeling of certainty that helps them step into a bigger, bolder version of themselves, something that they often hadn't even imagined was possible for themselves.
No. Well, which I can confirm. How did you get started? Because I know that this is not your the fingerprint analysis business is not your first business, but it seems to be your soul's purpose. And how did you get started in that business?
Well, I did what other people do. I got into I went to university, and then I got onto the corporate ladder because that's actually what my father and my brothers and stuff did. So that's what I did because that's what you should do. And a lot of my other ideas were apparently not very sensible. So I wasn't, I was encouraged to do things that would just give me job security and allow me to have a traditional, I suppose in many ways, path where you go to university, you get a job, you get married, you have a couple of kids and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And I have to say that even from the beginning, I felt like somebody was strangling me. But actually, I went and carried on doing what I was supposed to do. Well, initially, I didn't really know what I wanted, but because I was so busy trying to please everybody else, and so I ended up just doing what I should do. Yeah. And I ended up in the corporate world, and then I ended up through divine intervention. running, learning to run my own businesses. They were very traditional, businesses. One was a business to business business. The other was selling beautiful things to the public. And all of them, I learned so much through them. And definitely I was much more, shall we say, I felt less strangled doing them. But I never expected to be in business on my own. That was definitely divine intervention. And then what happened was when I was about 40, I think. I just had my daughter, my second child. Somebody who was very close to my sister-in-law's sister, who'd come to the UK with me, died, leaving 2 small children herself, motherless, which triggered all of my stuff, because I have siblings who I grew up with who lost their mother when they were very young. And so I didn't know how to deal with that. I didn't know how to, I was always quite good at reframing things and putting things into context, making some sense of things, so that they work for me, but I didn't know how to deal with this. This was just too big. And I decided that the only way that I could actually deal with the fact that she had died and left this big hole in our lives was that there had to be a gift in it for me. I had to see it as Melanie having given me a gift. And the gift I decided to choose was to finally stop making excuses for, when we have a calling within us and a sense of something that we want to do. But with Melanie, I had always found reasons why I shouldn't do it, the spiritual calling, the all of that sort of stuff. I felt like it wasn't a proper business. I should be having a proper business. I'm a smart, intelligent woman. That's not a proper business. It's too airy-fairy, You can imagine my husband comes from a banking kind of business background, and we would often mix with other people. And I had my own businesses, much more traditional businesses. So at a dinner party, it was okay to talk about that sort of stuff. And then when I actually started deciding, and through again a bunch of divine intervention, I discovered fingerprint analysis. So you can imagine when going to a dinner party, I would say, my husband does not want to say my wife is a hand or a fingerprint analyst. I mean, for him, that was like horrendous, So
bring out the scarf, like the scarf and the crystal ball.
The crystal ball. Oh God, the teasing that I got was really hard, and I wasn't for. I found it very hard to laugh at myself in those days. Since then, I now actually start the humor about myself. But at the time, I found it really quite hard to be mocked and to be picked on. So that was kind of an interesting experience. And the gift Melanie basically was giving me was just stop wasting time, follow your purpose, follow your inner knowing, stop making excuses. I was making a lot of money at the time, and so I was worried about giving that money up in order to do something else, because it supported our family. We had 2 kids, etc. And so that was an excuse to stay on this treadmill. But the reality was I was working 6 days a week. I wasn't really seeing much of my family anyway. So actually, is this what life was all about? So Melanie was very much the mirror that said, is this the life you want? No, and stop wasting time. You don't know how long you've got. And that's what made me first start to seek, life purpose. I've always been passionate and interested in purpose, because I always wonder, what's the purpose of our suffering? What is the purpose of all the challenges that we experience? So I started searching on purpose, and anyway, I found out it's about this fingerprint analysis. And I thought, I was just curious. I was following my curiosity. But this is a bit entertaining. And I have to say that I have quite a few curiosity seekers who often come and work with me as well. And I don't push them away, because I started my journey through curiosity. And so the first thing I did was I didn't know it was going to turn into a business. I didn't know that it would end up being something of any value. You know what I mean? I just was like, well, let me go and learn how to do it. It was a lot of money. It was a lot of money to learn this stuff. And I had to travel to the States and everything. And that was all money out of my family's coffers. I was kind of really, I was like, but there was something. I just felt like I have to do this. Initially, it was just honoring Melanie. You know what I mean? That was the first initiative. She felt like an inspiration to me to kind of actually do it. But after a while, it was just actually connecting with my inner knowing and just kind of knowing, that I really have to do this. So I spent all that money into it. And when I first came back to the UK, as I was learning more and more about it, I was like, well, okay, I'm passionate and amazing. I think this is amazing. But will anybody else like this? And so I just decided that initially I just asked people, can I have your handprints? I need to practice. And can I do you a written report? Because I didn't feel like I knew my stuff well enough to be in front of somebody to talk to them.
Yeah.
The feedback I got was so mind-blowing, and I love really strong, powerful results.
Yeah.
And so when I was getting this kind of feedback, I was going, oh, I can see some opportunities here. And I just felt this, it was like a sense of expansiveness of like, there's something here. And it wasn't just you know how it wasn't a purely headspace thing. Sometimes when we follow something, it's like a headspace. Oh, that looks like a great opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. It ticks all the boxes. For me, it was both the head and the heart soul they were aligned.
Yeah.
You know, my intelligence was ticked, but so was my intuition, and so was my heart. And I was like, okay, let's carry on. But at no time did I then put an expectation on this suddenly becoming this multi-million-dollar business or anything like that. I was like, okay, what's the next step?
Yes.
And I just slowly grew the thing. And I think the message or the learning for me is all the way through my life, and if I look back, and it was particularly true, is that when I stopped trying to say this is how it should be, and simply followed my curiosity and made some space for the universe to deliver, that's when the universe brought its guidance to me. That's when I got my inner knowing, and when I followed that, it worked. When I try to follow the shoulds and what my head was telling me and my training was telling me, you know, the real world, be practical stuff, it never has worked out for me.
No.
It has only ever worked out for me when I have made space and allowed the universe to just drip feed me initially.
Yeah.
And my experience is that the universe drip feeds you, first of all, to see whether you're interested. And when you show some engagement, it starts giving you bigger pieces.
Yeah.
But initially, you just get a little clues. And you have to follow them.
Yeah.
And then it gets bigger and brighter.
Yeah. I love what you said. You said the question of what's the next step? Because very often it's easy to get caught up in the full scope of things or the possibility of things, because it can be so big and confusing and scary and all these things. But if we can keep it to what's the next step, like what is the next step, and take that step, you know, and then see, okay, now I'm here, then what is the next step? You can actually expand. I call it expanding in love and dissolving fear, because you're actually taking those, you know, steps that you're doing. One of the things that you mentioned before we came on was how surrender played a huge part in this. How so?
I think it played a huge part before even. I think until, you know, I went through the whole corporate kind of, you know, school, tertiary education, getting on the corporate ladder, you know, looking for opportunities to be constantly promoted or whatever it is. All of that stuff is happening, ending up at a company. And I think sometimes this is when we're willing to surrender, is when things go really terribly wrong. And I ended up in a company where I think the only way that I could describe this company is as significantly ethically challenged.
Yeah.
And I didn't know at the time. I think I was unbelievably naive. Even in my late 20s, I was naive. Because I believed in the goodness, I think, of people on so many different levels. And the stress of being in this job resulted in me becoming ill, because I was so determined to do a good job or be a good girl or be a successful person. I didn't want to see this job as a failure.
No.
So I wasn't willing to give it up. So the universe had to help me and make me ill. And, you know, and then suddenly there was nothing there. And then suddenly there was space for things to shift. And I think that was a real learning for me around, actually, sometimes you just have to go with what happens, go with it, and stop trying to force it. In astrology, there's this thing that talk about where they talk about you having a Pluto transition over your midheaven, and that's when everything kind of goes pear-shaped. And I didn't know it at the time, but that's what I was experiencing. And the way that you deal with it when everything goes pear-shaped is you stop trying to control it. You stop trying to control everything, and you actually just go with what's in your heart and what you feel drawn to do. And you just look at the opportunities in front of you, and you just take one step at a time. And that was a profound learning experience for me, because that's how I ended up by accident starting my first business.
Yeah.
And it was never, I never intended that business to be a proper business. It was just meant to be something to do while I was getting better.
Yeah.
And I just discovered how much I love the freedom of running my own business, you know, and I learned so much, and I love the fact there was so much learning that went with it, etc.
Yeah.
But there was a point after it, but then I kind of stuck with it, and it wasn't actually a subject matter that was particularly stimulating for me. It was like I did property services, and I made a lot of money doing that, but I also imported French cherry wood furniture and Tibetan handmade rugs, and I was selling them via shows, etc., which kind of I enjoyed more. It appealed to my aesthetic, but it wasn't a good money-making business, whereas the property services business was good money-making, and that was really good learning for me about actually what works and what doesn't, etc.
Yes.
But again, I started to feel this calling within me that this doesn't feel right anymore. It felt uncomfortable. It started to feel like, you know, as I said, I was working 6 days a week, and you know, I wasn't really seeing much of my family. I was making a lot of money. I almost, you know, Melanie had to die for me to wake up and say, make some space for something to shift. And you have to often give up something.
Yeah.
I'm never one who ever advocates to my clients, give up your day job until you've got another way to earn money. I'm not about people ever feeling unsafe.
No.
But I really pared down. I got rid of all my staff for my business. I pared down and started just doing the basics and started leaving room for exploring.
Yes.
To start with. And that's when the universe started sending me, you know, search for this, search for purpose, search for this, you know, and send me the fingerprint analysis. And then I started to follow that. And each time it's always about, when you don't know what to do next, just make some space and be curious.
Yeah.
You know, just see what shows up. I think the shoulds are strangling.
Yes.
The obsession with having to be right.
Yes.
The obsession with having to know or having to follow a path you already know. It's like a noose around your neck.
Yes.
And it really strangles you and ends up making you feel sad, depressed, stuck, down, you name it. And a lot of people don't realize one of the key reasons why you get depressed is because you are denying your inner knowing.
Yeah.
You know, and most of the clients who come to me, when I share with them what's in their fingerprints, what they say to me, oh my God, you're the first person who's fully seen me. And I know I am that person. But they just didn't feel like they had permission to be this person. And when they see it reflected in their physical body, that they actually are designed to be this person, and it feels so true for them in here, then they go, what the hell? Why am I listening to everybody else? It's almost like gives them permission to be themselves, who they were designed to be, who they were put on this planet to be. You weren't put on this planet to suffer.
No.
Contrary to a lot of subconscious programming we get.
And I love how, with what you're sharing, is even though fingerprint analysis is an external tool, it's really about the internal. It's an outside experience giving you an inside experience, or a strengthening from within in terms of who you are and what you're here to do and who you're here to serve.
What I like about it, and the way that I describe it, is I think that we're these little golden Buddhas, if you want to call it, these shining golden little pieces. And as we grow in life, we collect mud, we collect dust.
Yeah.
And I think we look at ourselves in the mirror and we see this muddy, dusty bits of grass stuck on us kind of person looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
And we think that's us. And we feel small, and we feel that we're not good enough, and we feel like we're not talented enough, and we compare ourselves with the other person next door to us who has a little bit less mud on them.
Yeah.
And we think, I'm just so ugly and so awful. What you don't realize is you just need a shower. Yeah. And sometimes actually coming to me is the equivalent of taking a shower, because for the first time you start to see what's underneath all that mud.
Yeah.
And maybe the mud has been stuck for a long time, so you might need a few more showers than just mine. But the point is to actually the self-awareness that happens of the fact that and seeing that golden, shining, beautiful, enlightened self that who's there gives you so much hope.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah. So for me, that's the personal development aspect, in a way.
Yeah. What do you find in your business has been the most challenging, or the most challenging, or the most difficult?
I have found this business, which requires so much of me, and it requires me being authentic and in integrity with myself.
Yeah.
It requires me constantly following my truth and my inner knowing.
Yeah.
Way harder in some ways than the other businesses I ran for many. And, I think my property services business I ran for 17 years, the other business for 6 years. In all those journeys, it was so much simpler and so much clearer. And I do think that we need to find our courage to follow our purpose. And I really believe that when we have a purpose-led business, it is harder than a traditional business because it brings up all your stuff. And I think that it's the ultimate personal growth vehicle, and it's, when I say personal growth, it's personal and spiritual growth. But I think that it's very difficult to do spiritual growth without doing personal growth. And you have to start with the personal growth, and then it becomes a joint journey of personal and spiritual growth together. But I think you have to start with the personal growth.
Yeah.
And that is, but I think that's exactly what your soul wants you to do. For me, business is the perfect vehicle for the expression of your soul purpose. The reason why you're here. It gives you an opportunity to share what you're gifted at, but it also gives you an opportunity to receive. And for a lot of people don't understand that spirituality is not about giving. It's about giving and receiving. You hear about balance, right? You need to be able to receive. One of the analogies I often use for people is I say that if you are this unbelievable container with the best quality, red wine, that stuff that is old and kind of has a sediment at the bottom, if you're just constantly giving, you're eventually giving sediment. You have to be refilling your wine in order to be able to keep giving good quality wine to people.
Yeah.
And so I think business just gives you a really wonderful set of boundaries, healthy boundaries to be able to serve and receive.
Yeah.
Through.
Yeah.
But the other thing I have said, it's much harder to lead in many ways a purpose-led business. For me, it's harder on a personal aspect, but it's also way more fulfilling.
Yes.
And that's why it's worth doing.
Yeah. I mean, I fully agree. I see that, for me, what you call a purpose-led business, it brings up every, at least that's the way it's been for me. It brings up every limiting belief, every self-doubt, every boundary I've not set, every thing I've had to learn in terms of, boundaries, but in terms of clients, in terms of money, in terms of space, in terms of demand, like requirements, everything is being brought. And that's what I see both within myself and also within the clients that I do serve and work with, is that it comes up, and I see it as these initiations that we go through where it's like, oh, now there's another piece of shit that's coming up, whether it be in terms of dealing with an employer or an employee or a contractor or freelancer, whether it be dealing with a client, whether it be, figuring out systems or like voicing yourself, visibility, literally everything that you can imagine, that's going to be brought up for you to clear. And that to me is where when you move through that is where the fulfillment, the satisfaction, the joy, and the freedom, like the deep freedom.
Well, I think freedom is absolutely, so a lot of the people I work with are freedom seekers or people who love freedom, because actually we discover I think it's also about power. I think when we have the power to be free, so like, when running my own businesses gave me the power to be in charge of my own life, it gave me the freedom to be in charge of my own life. I tend to see the two very similarly linked.
Yeah.
I do think, the greatest freedom often comes when we are willing to put a few structures in place and live by those structures. Brings more freedom than just trying to be all over the place. You need to have some kind of divine masculine in order to experience the divine feminine. Yeah. Because otherwise it's the equivalent of pouring, taking your water and just spreading sprinkles all over the place, and none of the plants actually get watered properly.
You know that I agree with that.
So, so I'm really, really passionate basically about the focus that being in business will help you with. The personal development side, I would say, having run a business just in a normal, traditional kind of way without, look, I've always been into personal development and spiritual growth up to a point, but I've hidden that a lot because, you know, it wasn't kind of cool, and it wasn't, and I got mocked a lot, or people would look at me a bit weirdly, like, oh, she's on another planet. And I really wanted people to see me as smart, intelligent human being. So I kept things that I thought other people wouldn't respond well to myself. And to a certain extent, I suppose I still do, if I'm honest. Not completely. I'm much more honest about the fact that I'm deeply spiritual. My business is very spiritually led, but I don't tell everybody that.
No.
I only discuss that, to be honest with you, in communities where people know the value of that. Yeah. Because I think when you're talking to people, because a lot of us are here to be the bridge for the people who are in the zone that I was in and not doing the spiritual stuff and living in this world which is run by uninspiring rules, and it makes you feel like you're on a hamster wheel. Yeah. I think we're here to kind of, you know, be the bridge to take those people into a space where they are revealing their unique brilliance. They are actually being this beautiful shining light in the world and making a change as a result. And so you can't communicate with those people with your most obvious language straight off.
No.
So I think it's really important to have that, to understand the spiritual aspect of what you're doing and how you're doing it and how it's affecting you and how you're talking to your clients, but also then to use language that is more accessible for people who are not on that journey in an obvious way and an accepted way, a way that they accept yet. Yeah. So it's really important. So that, I think, in itself is a massive lesson for those of us on the spiritual journey. You know, it doesn't diminish our spiritualness because we're finding language to talk to people in that doesn't appear to be spiritual in any way.
I would say that, I mean, for me, that very much comes in terms of who you are here to serve. I hear you in that. I hear you in that. And I agree that there is a bunch of people that are out there to be rainbow bridges. And even I have been at some point. However, it's also about who you're here to serve and how you, and those are the people that you then mold your language towards. And it's not about excluding, it's more about including people in
because any kind of profound transformation, and this is another thing that I think a lot of people don't get, is that I cannot heal you. I can only find a way to communicate with you in your language and make the space for you to heal yourself. And a lot of people on a spiritual journey can be a little, and I say this with love, can be a little arrogant, can be a little like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm getting my downloads. I'm doing my whatever. And I'm thinking, we're all on our own journey, and we need to be able to connect with people with heart and with love, and know that even if they are not using the same language as you, it doesn't mean they're not having an equally profound experience of life. No. And that if we want to connect with people, we always need to connect with them on their level. We don't start with us, we start with them.
From the heart.
Yeah. And that is actually, that in itself is a more spiritual service, because you are putting yourself and your need to communicate where you are and what your truths are and, what is true for you aside, so that you can connect first with the other person. It's a little bit like what I've talked about making room for the universe to actually give you opportunities. Yes. I think in the same way, when you're connecting with potential clients or potential people that you might serve, it's about making room for them to share what they need first before you jump in.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that is a massive, huge thing for those of us to get to the space where we can stand back, cannot judge, cannot eat, because we have a tendency to often have like, this is the way things should be. And in the real world, but we also do that on a spiritual level. Yes. We also do this like, this is how things should be spiritually. Yes. Really? How do you know? Are you God?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. There's really that's one of the things that I was thinking, is that like you can't really put a label on spirituality, because like it is really up to your communion with the source or whatever you call that which is within you, and connect with that as well. Have you always been like this, or like have you always been open? Have you always and I know this is a very leading question, but but have you always been spiritually open?
I didn't know I was spiritually open. I just was. Does it make sense? I think that when I was a child, I had a very unusual experience when I was born, I was a bit crippled and my legs were damaged, etc. And it was a very difficult birth for both my mother and myself. I definitely did not want to come back to this planet. I can assure you at the time, and I was very reluctant. And that, by the way, that little theme has played out in my life significantly, about reluctance of doing my purpose, reluctance of doing, getting pushed into something by the universe, but I need to be constantly pushed. I don't really, really want to do it. And actually sort of like connecting with the want is something that is always a learning journey for me. Anyway, but earlier on in the childhood, very interestingly, a man turned up. I grew up in Swaziland in the bush in Africa, and a man turned up. I think my mother says she thinks it was just after I was born, and she came back from the hospital, and he was looking for a job, and she needed somebody to help her out, and she said fine. And he became like the person who basically ran our household. We had because when you're living in Africa, the way that you help others is you employ them. You have a lot of servants, people who work in the garden or in the house or whatever, because they don't have the education. They're in the rural environment, so you want to give as many people jobs as you can. Anyway, but he ended up, running the household like clockwork. My mother said, and for the years, and he stayed with us until I was about 5 or 6. And she didn't know, but I mean, I spent more time with Ben than pretty much anyone else. He was the one that knew so much about me, and that my mother just didn't seem to get. He was the one who healed my legs. That I could actually end up walking quite at age 10 months, whereas they thought they were going to have to put me in calipers. I remember burning myself and having Ben put some kind of weird ointment on, which I don't know, I think he concocted himself, and actually having no scar afterwards. And anyway, it turned out later that my mother found out after he left, the reason why everything ran absolutely clockwork in a house was he was a Sangoma, a good witch doctor, which are healers, but they also work with the mystical. And my mother still says to the day, the reason why you think as crazy as you do, I'm sure it's all because of all that training Ben must have given you way back when. So, but I had that, but also I was a very, I suppose, psychic child. I used to see spiritual entities. I had an awareness, etc. I remember I had an old man who used to sit at the end of my bed, every night. And I never the weird thing was, I must have been a bit of an old soul, because I didn't always tell my parents everything about what I saw and etc. Although when I did say things to my mother, she would sometimes say, oh, Helen, stop telling lies. Just get real. Just get real. Found out later on that, as I told you previously, that, actually she used to see things too, but it got her into trouble. So she wanted me to stop seeing. So the messages I got from a young age were always, it's not okay to see something that other people can't see. It's not okay to not be real, factual, truthful, what's right in front of you kind of thing. It was always a slightly cup is half empty perspective. I felt heavily criticized all the way through my childhood, etc. And that shut me down more and more and more. But still, I would have these little experiences along the way that were like, I'm definitely, something's happening. There's an awareness. I had experiences which made me realize that even though I was a small child, there was this other part of me that was very strong and powerful and was more than an adult, a protective part of me that actually, for a while, when I was aware of it, was very empowering and made me feel very secure. But as life went on, again, that bit got muddied up, and I forgot that insight that I had because of things that happened in childhood, etc. And so I think I slowly, because of the world's experiences, I became more and more shut down. And I got to the end of school, and I was like, well, what do I do now? Who am I? And I don't feel special. I don't feel unique in any way. But, then I had experiences again. I had another, this was the first time I went to an astrologer because I didn't know what to do with myself. And she turned out to be really quite, not just an astrologer, but like a real psychic person. And I'm really grateful I went to see her. She just really gave me some insights, which just really helped me in my next steps as well. So that I feel was definitely universally guided. When I was 6, I had this, I just got this, I had 2 different downloads that happened to me when I was quite young. I keep saying when I was 6, but it was probably 5, 6, 7, who knows. One was that I was only meant to grow up in Africa. I wasn't meant to live there. I was always meant to move to the UK. It was like this absolute knowing. It was a real bizarre knowing. And then the other one was that I don't know when I got this. I might have been a bit older, that I never understood it at the time because the language didn't really make sense to me. But I felt that I was here to help, that my whole purpose of my existence and the whole reason I've come to this planet was to actually help people honor their heavenly commitments. But you know, it's not exactly you can go around as a child saying, oh yeah, I'm here to help other people honor their heavenly commitments. Can you imagine? I mean, I was like, I didn't know what it meant. I just got this kind of like download, and I would like to use the word download loosely, but it was just something that was like an inner knowing in me. And so when I didn't know what to do, and I'd finished school and my education, because I did my education based on what other people thought I should do. And I still didn't want to actually follow the career path because I trained as a computer program. I studied business and trained as a computer program systems analyst. And I didn't want to do that. I then thought, well, what do I do? And the only thing left at that time was that memory of I'm not meant to stay in Africa. I'm meant to go to Europe. And I just thought, okay, it's time to get on a plane. And that was, again, making space, you know, and being on that journey.
How do you find, so how is it to sit here today, have a successful business where you are helping people, you know, finding their purposes and living their heavenly commitments, or what you called it?
Honoring their heavenly commitment.
How is that for you today?
It's really kind of interesting because I have these moments of I'm so excited and I'm so thrilled and like I just loving what I'm doing, especially when you kind of have those clients where you just kind of go, that was just so amazing. And, you know, I've made and they tell you what a huge impact you've made on their lives. I mean, really, that is kind of, you know, that's the kind of stuff you want written on your gravestone, right? That you actually, even if you just change one person's life so that they become happier and they make a bigger impact on the world, it's enough. But I have so many people that tell me about that. And so for that, that's really great. But I won't tell you that I've got it sorted. No. Because I don't think any of us have ever got it sorted. I still have my times where I kind of go into this like, what the hell am I doing? Yes. Who do I think I am to do this stuff? And then, but I think two interesting things that happen with that I think for your particular listeners would be useful is the one is for me to, at that point, when I get into that down phase, okay, of like, oh, what am I doing? I actually go and I look up and I kind of go, okay, guys, I need some inspiration. Yeah. Send me some, you know, reinvigorate me. The interesting thing that I have learned about that is that if you are not asking, they won't give. I mean, it's not that they won't give, but sometimes they have to because there's a path. But you get so much more if you are open. And you say, okay, guys, can you send me somebody, right? Can you, like, and I find, yes, I do marketing. Yes, I do whatever. I don't market like other people do. I just kind of go, okay, guys, I've had a really great holiday. Can you send me some clients now? And suddenly I start getting phone calls. Now, yes, if I do more marketing and more business-related stuff, I get more phone calls. Yes. But what I sometimes need is sometimes need to just get restarted again. Yes. And I need to also trust that who they send me is who I need to serve right at that moment and not reject that person. Yes. So that's the one bit of information. Can I just
add? Yeah. I love that. I love that because somehow we've been conditioned into by, I don't know, whatever providence, but we've been conditioned into this idea that we're supposed to be subservient and just sit and wait for it to come, that we can't ask for what we want, that we can't actively seek it, so just like hallelujah. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Just on that, I will tell you right now, the universe is when things have come to me that I haven't asked for, they have been the things I needed because I was in such significant resistance. However, when I'm actually just on that plateau, they're going to leave me there unless I actively choose and say, okay, guys, I'm going to engage. So for instance, I'll give you my second example. When I first started this business way back when, I got a certain amount of PR, and that was about 5 years ago, whatever the case may be, or not 5 years from now, but 5 years before this incident. Yeah. And I suddenly sat down and I said, okay, guys, if you really want, I haven't been on TV. for a long time, and I haven't been on TV in a way that kind of really was the kind of things I wanted to talk about. It was more like, I think I did it as a part of a game show was one thing, and I can't remember what the other thing was, because I was on Channel 4 and Channel 5 originally. And then anyway, then I kind of sat there and I said, okay guys, if you want me to be on TV, and by the way, I said this only in my office on my own, not to anybody. I didn't mention it to anybody. I didn't search anything on the internet. I did zero, other than say, if you want me to be on TV, I will go and follow through on any opportunity you send me.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, I get a phone call, and this guy's waffling, and I'm thinking it's another marketing caller. It's some idiot. How am I going to get rid of him? And just something made me stay on the phone call, because he didn't, if he had just said I'm from ITV right from the beginning, but he gave, ITV has some other name, like some business name or whatever it is that he said he was from. And so I don't know what he was talking about. I just thought, okay, just let him flow. And so I said, okay, so how can I help you? Oh, we want you to be on the Lorraine Show, which is a morning TV show. And we want you to talk about the fingerprint, hands and fingerprints. I was like, wow, okay. I said this to the universe. This is what the universe wanted me to do. I will do what, no. So you have to say yes, even though it's scary. And the idea like, oh my God, I carry too much weight and I'm going to be on TV. What will people say about me? Da, 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 da. Anyway, I did that. And then I kind of, and a little side view on that, by the way. The interview was put on, I think it was put on, oh, it wasn't the interview, actually. It's the second thing. I'll come back to that. Anyway, then there was, after this interview, there was, I sat there and I thought, oh, this is amazing. Wow, the guys just delivered. So I said to them, okay, I am your vessel. I will do whatever you want me to do. If you want me to be in the newspaper again, the one newspaper I haven't been in, which has got really the biggest circulation aside from the tabloids, is the Daily Mail. So maybe if you want me to kind of like, be on newspaper, just let me know. Within a week, I got a phone call from somebody saying, oh, I'm a journalist for the Daily Mail. Now, 5 years prior to that, I could not get in the Daily Mail nobody wanted to know. No. And I ended up with a double-page spread in the Daily Mail, and they had a banner on the front page leading them to the double-page spread. What I wanted to say about that was they also put that article online, right, which is about looking at the royals' hands, I think it was, that particular one. And the vitriol written by so many people underneath the article about how rude I think I was and how awful I was, etc. And I thought back, because I've done this work from a place of pure service, of being actually a vessel for whatever they wanted me to do, I would go ahead and do. But I would ask and I would say, okay, I'm ready. What do you want me to do? And I'd be a bit more specific. What those people had to say, I just sat there and laughed. I thought it was hilarious, because I just saw them as people who, were limited in their thinking. They weren't open in any way. Anyway, it doesn't matter what I thought. The point was that I was able to laugh and not be affected by it. Whereas I can tell you, before I started doing this business, I would have been mortified. Absolutely. I would have wanted to go and slit my wrist based on some of the stuff that they had to say. But because it wasn't about me, and I was just being of service, to whatever they wanted. I didn't have any attachment to what other people had to say.
And that, I think, leads back to what you actually started out with, talking about the strength and the power that comes through having a purpose-led business and living your purpose, honoring your heavenly commitments.
Because, okay, so let me explain the heavenly commitments thing, just to clarify that, is that I think we all come here with a contract of how we want to serve and what we want to learn, and that we have great enthusiasm to start with. And then what happens is life gets in the way, and we get into the state of and just, we're just lost in the hamster wheel of it. And basically what you need is, and for what a lot of clients come to me, is to really get their asses kicked. With love, because it's about them actually stop wasting time, stop playing small. And I'm not saying you have to go out there and play hugely big, but stop diminishing yourself so that so that you can fit in, so that you can make other people around you feel good. and
that's
it's
the journey
really
that you've taken. I mean, and that's why it's so congruent and why it's so aligned and why it's so honest, is because that is the journey that you have yourself gone through.
completely, because I am naturally quite powerful,
Yeah.
as you will have ascertained already. And I've got a strong personality, and I'm opinionated, and I've got all these things that in many ways are, especially as a woman, it's very much just people say that's not okay. It's not okay for you to be like that. Constantly told to get back in my box, constantly slapped down, constantly criticized for that, because people were and started to feel really bad about being strong, about having an opinion, feeling like it wasn't okay to be me. And when I got my fingerprints and I found out I was exactly who I was meant to be, I was like, oh. And since then, the incredible thing is to actually realize I have exactly the personality I need to do the work that I am contracted to do on this planet. So hence, hence I keep calling in these people and making a huge transformation for them, because they're coming to me because they feel this alignment. And my husband laughs at me because sometimes I get on phone calls with people, and he said, you really, really were discouraging that person from working with you, weren't you? And I was going, yeah, I just didn't feel that I was right for them. And I will genuinely discourage people from working with me when I just feel like the best thing I could do for them is actually that conversation. That conversation helps them get on a path that maybe is the right path for them, but they don't have to spend money with me. No. Whereas the other people, you can just feel it's like magnet. Yes. And actually my clients will often tell me, they just feel like I have to work with her. I have to go and see her. And that's what you want your business to feel like. You want to have people come and work with you who really want to be there, who really, I talk, and so we were going back to, helping people find strength, find courage. And certainty has a certain amount of safety to it. So if I have a clarity and a certainty about what it is that I'm here to do, and that it's okay to be me, and it's okay that I'm actually piss people off because I'm strong, and it's okay that or maybe that I've got a tiny little voice and I don't really speak up very much, and I'm this very small person and it's hard to be seen. Maybe that's okay. You know what I mean? And being okay about being you. Yes. And seeing the value that you actually bring because you are who you are. That, I think, when you get that, it's like somebody gives you wings. Yes. And that you feel more certain of yourself. You feel more like you have a purpose.
What's your next step, Helen?
My next step?
We've already gone over time, but we're about to wrap up. What's your next step?
In relation to my business, my personal life?
Your business.
My business? My next step probably is very to create my online program, really, so that those people who are curiosity seekers and don't know whether they're really ready to work with me yet. Yes. I believe I work with serious seekers and curiosity seekers. Yeah. But because my time has become more and more valuable, because people are finding it more and more valuable, and I've been doing this for long enough to communicate fairly well. Yeah. I can't work as well. I want to just make it easier for people to just try it out and see what it's like. Yeah. And so that's really my next step. Because mostly people come and work with me at a deeper level, almost straight off. Yes.
Okay. And do you see that also again as a part of your expansion, as your, will you come up against challenges and?
Oh, absolutely. Every time. I mean, I am by nature resistant to my whole purpose. In fact, I often have a little conversation with the guys upstairs and go, I know you want me to do that, but I'm too lazy. I really don't want to do that. Make it easy for me, and then I'll do it. Or I'll say stuff like, do I really have to do this? And I'll just get this like yes or no, as to, you have to get, this is one of the ones where we're not going to do it for you. You have to get off your butt and actually do it. So absolutely, I think my issue throughout this whole journey is my natural inner resistance to being seen, to playing bigger, I think fundamentally a lot of us, we make up excuses, but ultimately we're really kind of lazy. Our excuses are, I don't feel like I'm good enough, or whatever it is. A lot of it is just, A lot of it is, if you really, really kind of get down to it, it's just too much hard work, you know. So it's okay to continue playing small because it's actually easier. And sometimes being in your pain is easier than actually sort of choosing to be happy, choosing to be enlightened and engaged. So I'm constantly dealing with that little gremlin who kind of says, let's stay home and have cake.
Yes.
What do you mean I have to get on a stage? What do you mean I have to go and prepare a workshop for these people, you know? I think what that does happen, I think that initially, until you actually get to that point where people are really valuing what you do, then you might be very engaged and want to put the program on and want to kind of be in that. But once you've done that a few times, and you're kind of like, yeah, been there, done that. Yeah. Got the t-shirt. Yes. Do I really have to do it some more, guys? Yeah. Okay, if you really want me to do, fine. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like I'm constantly engaging with that thrill that I get from actually helping people, that thrill I get from being on stage and really making an impact on people, even the people who don't end up working with me, just having them in the room. And anybody listening to this, if I've made any impact on you, by the way, I love to get the feedback and just that it, you know, of what was helpful for you that I shared. That for me is thrilling. That stuff is thrilling. But, you know, when I'm not doing that, there's this other part of me like, oh, let's get some cake and tea and hang out.
Yes, I do.
You know? So it's kind of, I think, you know, I always think it's about that give and receive. It's about that balance of being the inspired human being, the inspired soul who's connected to your higher self that actually lights people up, being the human version of yourself with your feet of clay. And we're always going to have both.
Yes.
And we're always going to have experiences with both.
Exactly.
And and my view is, if I don't have my feet of clay, how can I connect with the people I'm here to help?
True. Exactly.
But then again, that may be a limiting belief on my part. We'll see. But
we'll see. Is there anything else that you would like to share other than everything that you've shared? Is there anything that's coming up that you want to share as we finish?
Well, I think I just want to reiterate my ultimate message, which is you are on this planet for a purpose. You have been given the personality you've been given and the gifts you've been given and the challenges, all for a reason. And stop trying to please everybody else and try to really start listening to your inner self. And you may not yet know that you are a potential leader. You may not feel that you have anything special or unique to offer. But that doesn't mean that that won't happen eventually. It just, the reason why you don't feel that is because you're not in touch with who you actually are. Which is why I often say I work with leaders in the making. People who, what are leaders? People who are unique, who do things their own way, who follow their own path. And I think that you can follow your own path. You can be whoever you want to be. Just start with one thing. Just change one thing. Just choose to be happier, just in one area of your life. Even if it's just your morning routine. What can you do to make yourself feel happy for the beginning of the day? And ultimately, for those of you who are kind of a bit more business driven, I would say to you, I'm really passionate about you running your own business and it being a perfect vehicle for the expression of your life purpose. You are here to express your life purpose. You are not here to be in resistance. You are not here to be on the hamster wheel. You are here actually to get off that plateau, find your energy again, get inspired and make a difference.
Yes. Amen.
Thank you.
Helen, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I am super excited to be sharing this with the world. I know that, I, for one, am really, really grateful that you found your path and that you found your purpose and that you're living your purpose, because I, in my business, know the results that come from that. So thank you so much for who you are and for what you do. And thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my message. Thank you.
That is what I have for you in today's episode of Spiritual Business with Maria Saraphina. I hope it served you well. For all the deeds and details, click the link in the description. And if you enjoyed this episode, support its message by sharing it with a friend or on social media. You can also choose to leave me a comment or a review. I love you. God bless.